is a superstar. I've been saying it for years. I keep telling everybody she's the Steph Curry of women's basketball, college or pro.
That is a shame. Knock it down.
Oh, man, look at this stroke.
Yeah.
Like it had eyes.
Yeah.
Like
Put that pressure on him. Put that pressure on him. Put that pressure on him. Put that pressure on him, lady. That's what I'm talking about. Put that pressure on him. Hey, you can't be the person that don't miss. Best you can do is tie him. Okay.
Here's what's been sliding under the radar. Stephen Curry's shooting coach has been posting Caitlin Clark content nonstop, and it's starting to look very intentional. People are connecting dots fast, and the signs are pointing to something way bigger than just social media love. The real question isn't whether Caitlin might be training with Steph's personal shooting coach during this offseason. The question is what happens when the league's biggest star starts aligning herself with voices that actually call out the problems everyone else pretends don't exist. Because this isn't just about improving her jumper. This is about Caitlin Clark positioning herself to force change in how the WNBA operates without ever having to make herself the headline. And if you've been watching closely, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Caitlin dropped a comment on one of Steph's recent interviews, and that single move had the WNBA community buzzing. Steph had just played a game where the Hornets were glued to him, face guarding him like he owed them money. When asked about it, Steph said something that cut right to the point. He called that kind of defense not real basketball. That line matters because it's not just commentary. It's validation for what Caitlin has been dealing with all season long. And Caitlin's response? She commented, "We want to see Steph make 12 threes a game. Stop grabbing him, please." On the surface, that could have been any fan showing love to a player they respect. But when it comes from Caitlin Clark, and she's talking about that exact issue, it lands completely differently. The grabbing, the holding, the constant physical pressure on the perimeter. That's been the headline of Caitlin's entire WNBA experience so far. If you believe the story behind the story matters, smash that like button. It tells us we're on the right track. Now let's be clear about what we're really looking at here. This isn't some random off-season rumor that'll fade by training camp. This is Caitlin Clark making a calculated move. She's not just working on her game. She's building alliances with people who understand what it's like to be the most targeted player on the floor every single night. And she's doing it in a way that puts pressure on the league without turning herself into the villain. Many of you have been saying this for weeks. The officiating in the WNBA has been inconsistent at best and blatantly one-sided at worst when it comes to how Caitlin gets defended. Teams send their most physical defender with one mission: push her off spots, lean on her through screens, hold her arms, bump her, bringing the ball up. Most of it goes uncalled because there's this culture in the league that treats excessive physicality like a badge of toughness. Caitlin's rookie season was a crash course in that exact treatment. She was blitzed more than any other player to start the year. Some of that coverage really is just smart basketball. When you're facing the best shooter on the planet, you're supposed to adjust. No one's arguing that part. But what we've seen goes way past smart defense and straight into contact that would get called a foul in almost any other scenario. The problem? WNBA refs have been letting it slide. Possession after possession, even Stephanie White, who's coaching Caitlin now in Indiana but was on the other side coaching Connecticut last season, admitted it herself. She said there's way too much contact being allowed on the perimeter across the entire league. That's not fan noise. That's a head coach calling it how she sees it from both angles. Rebecca Lobo picked up on it too during broadcasts. She started pointing out missed fouls on Caitlin constantly. Foul here, foul there. Everyone sees it. But the whistle stays quiet. Meanwhile, Caitlin has mostly kept things low-key in public. She's only spoken up about specific moments, like the Kennedy Carter shoulder check, which was clearly out of line. But she's never gone on record saying the way teams guard her isn't real basketball. She hasn't turned it into a public standoff. she hasn't made it a league-wide debate. That's why her comment on Steph's interview hit harder than people expected. When she tells defenders to stop grabbing him, it feels like there's more behind it. She's backing Steph, but she's also speaking from experience without making herself the headline. That's the smart part. She gets her message across without sounding like she's asking for special treatment. Let's filter out the noise for a second and look at what Steph actually said in that interview. When asked if the Hornets' defense bothered him, his answer was revealing. He said part of him pushes back because it's not real basketball. But there's also a side that feels flattering because it shows how much stress he puts on a defense. That "not real basketball" comment carries serious weight. What Steph was really saying, in a clean and professional way, is that when defenders stop playing straight-up defense and start grabbing, holding, and face-guarding all game, that's not skill. That's not strategy. That's fear dressed up as toughness. And that's a feeling Caitlin Clark knows all too well. Here's where the training angle becomes more than just speculation. Steph's shooting coach has been posting Caitlin's highlights, breakdowns of her mechanics, commentary on her game. It's not casual. It's consistent. It's intentional. Now combine that with Steph showing up in his Nike kicks again, which only added more fuel to the conversation. Then add Caitlin's strategic comment, backing Steph on the exact issue she deals with every night. You were onto something when you noticed these connections. This isn't coincidence. This is alignment. If Caitlin really is working with Steph's shooting coach during the offseason, that partnership could become something serious. The methods that have helped Steph stay elite well into his late 30s could extend Caitlin's prime and help her manage the wear that comes with being every defense's top target. But there's another layer here that's even more important. By aligning herself with Steph, both publicly and potentially through training, Caitlin is borrowing credibility. When Steph Curry says excessive face guarding and grabbing isn't real basketball, the league listens. He's earned that voice through 2 decades of excellence. He's respected universally. When Caitlin echoes that same message, she's not complaining. She's not whining about rough play. She's standing next to one of the greatest shooters in basketball history and saying, "We're dealing with the same thing." That's leverage. That's strategy. And connecting the dots reveals something crucial. The WNBA is at a crossroads right now. The league is expanding. Media deals are growing. Sponsorships are rolling in. A lot of that momentum traces directly back to what happened during Caitlin's rookie year. Crowds showed up in numbers the league hadn't seen before. TV viewership spiked hard. Jerseys couldn't stay on shelves. Brands that ignored the WNBA for years suddenly wanted partnerships. That shift changed the entire conversation around the league. And that's why Caitlin's words carry weight. She holds more leverage than anyone else involved. The current push for bigger salaries, better conditions, and league growth didn't appear out of thin air. It traces back to the attention she brought in. So when Caitlin speaks up, even indirectly through comments backing another player, it matters. She's not just the face of the league's growth. She's the reason players even have leverage right now. Her impact is what's driving the money, the attention, and the urgency behind these negotiations. That means her voice should carry real weight when it comes to how the game is officiated. Because without the revenue she brings in, higher salaries aren't even on the table. That's not opinion. That's how the business works. Now imagine Caitlin coming back next season sharper, cleaner mechanics, faster shot prep. New counters pulled straight from Steph's playbook. She's already the most dangerous offensive force in the WNBA. If she levels up again, defenses are going to panic even more, trying to slow her down. And that circles right back to the officiating problem. As she becomes harder to guard, the grabbing and holding will likely increase unless the league steps in. That's why her comment on Steph's interview feels important. It might be the opening move in a much bigger conversation. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Is Caitlin Clark making the right move by aligning with Steph on this issue, or should she be more direct about the officiating? I want to hear your take on how this plays out. Starting a public war with referees almost never works and usually backfires. Players who complain openly about officiating get labeled as whiners, and refs tend to tighten up even more. But aligning herself with Steph and echoing the same issues he faces puts quiet pressure on the league. She makes the point without playing the villain, and the fact that Stephanie White, who once used those same physical tactics against her in Connecticut, is now coaching her in Indiana only adds another layer to the story. Stephanie White understands better than anyone how effective that physical strategy was. She also understands how damaging it is long-term. She's seen it work, and she's seen what it does to the product. That's why her speaking up on officiating actually matters. She's not just backing her own player now. She's acknowledging there's a real structural issue baked into how games are being called. Reading between the lines, this whole situation points to something deliberate. Caitlin isn't just randomly commenting on Steph's content. She's not accidentally building connections with his coaching staff. This is intentional positioning. She's placing herself in conversations with people the league already respects, and she's doing it in a way that shifts the narrative without forcing confrontation.
But Caitlin Clark commented underneath that video, "We want to see Steph make 12 threes a game. Stop grabbing him, please." You know? And she never really, she would say when something was a foul or to, a complaint to that ilk. But Caitlin hasn't come out and said, what they're doing isn't basketball, and you get the attention that she does. You're going to get outsized defensive attention. In a rookie season, she was blitzed more to start that year than any team. A lot of that is strategy. They know what she can do. They know where she has the ball, all that stuff. But then there's part of it like trying to prove a point against her. And then, of course, when you want to rough up the other team's star, that's what coaches preach. If the refs are going to let you do it, you do it. It's something that became a point of contention across her WNBA career so far with Stephanie White, who probably deployed that strategy with the Connecticut Sun, saying that too much contact is allowed on the perimeter. And that's a thing across the WNBA, and it became a theme across the WNBA. But, Caitlin is allowed to be grabbed and held and all those things, even to the point where I remember there was a broadcast where Rebecca Lobo pointed out, like, there's a foul, and there's a foul, and there's...
That comment Caitlin made gets even more meaningful when you look at what actually happens on the floor. The Kennedy Carter incident made the issue impossible to ignore. That wasn't defense. It was a message play with no basketball purpose behind it. Caitlin spoke up because it crossed a clear line, but the smaller stuff, the constant grabbing and holding every possession, is harder to call out without getting labeled as someone who complains too much. That's the genius of using Steph as the example. She's backing another elite shooter dealing with the same nonsense. Anyone paying attention understands the subtext, and that line about wanting to see Steph hit 12 threes in a game says it all. Because that's exactly what fans want from her too. Fans want the fireworks. They want to see her pulling up from the logo, snapping records in half, and turning games into highlights. What they don't want is defensive mugging disguised as toughness. People tune in to watch elite offensive talent do things that seem impossible. They don't tune in to watch referees let defenders clutch and grab for 40 minutes. When you compare officiating across leagues, the contrast is obvious. The NBA struggles with players exaggerating contact to get whistles. Flopping has become a skill in itself. The WNBA runs into the opposite issue, where legitimate contact often gets ignored completely. Both problems hurt the product, just in different ways. So when Steph says that extreme face guarding and grabbing isn't real basketball, that message should land. He's not wrong. Basketball at its best is about skill, spacing, timing, and clean execution. When defenders are allowed to clutch, grab, and disrupt shooters without consequences, the flow dies. Fans lose, players lose, and the game looks worse. Caitlin has dealt with that nonstop. Teams assign their most physical defender to her with one simple mission: make her uncomfortable, push her off her spots, slow her down by any means necessary. And because the refs have been inconsistent with how they call it, teams keep pushing boundaries. Here's where the bigger picture comes into focus. If the WNBA is serious about long-term growth, and all signs say they are with expansion talks and bigger media deals, then the league has to let its stars breathe. That starts with officiating games in a way that allows elite offensive talent to actually show what makes them special. That doesn't mean turning the sport soft or removing physical play altogether. It means finding the balance where competition exists without killing creativity. Let skill win more often. Reward players who can execute at the highest level instead of letting defenders hack their way through possessions. The league needs Caitlin Clark at her best, not getting grabbed every time she tries to run off a screen, not dealing with hand checks every time she brings the ball up the floor. The product is better when she's allowed to play freely. Ratings prove it. Ticket sales prove it. Jersey sales prove it. That's the reality the WNBA has to accept. Caitlin isn't asking for special treatment. She's asking for the game to be called fairly so the best players can actually play. And by connecting her message to Steph's experience, she's making it impossible to dismiss as personal grievance. Now let's talk about what happens if this training connection is real. If Caitlin is working with Steph's shooting coach, the methods she's learning aren't just about shooting mechanics. It's about efficiency. It's about shot selection. It's about sustainability. Steph has maintained elite shooting percentages for nearly 15 years. That doesn't happen by accident. The wear and tear of being the primary focus of every defense takes a toll. Steph has figured out how to manage that load while staying effective. If Caitlin absorbs those lessons, she could extend her prime significantly, and that makes her even more valuable to the league long term. But the training is only one piece. The strategic alignment matters just as much. By publicly supporting Steph and connecting their experiences, Caitlin is building a coalition. She's showing the league that this isn't just her problem. It's a problem that affects the best offensive players at every level. That coalition matters because change rarely happens when one voice speaks alone. But when multiple credible voices say the same thing, leagues pay attention. The WNBA can ignore one player's complaints. They can't ignore a growing chorus that includes coaches, commentators, and players from other leagues, all pointing at the same issue. Caitlin understands that, and she's moving accordingly. This isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It's calculated. She's playing the long game on the court and off it, training at the highest level, aligning with voices the league already respects, and speaking on issues without turning it into noise. That's how real change happens. Stars elevating the product, forcing conversations, and pushing the league forward without burning bridges. If the WNBA wants to keep growing, this is the kind of moment that matters. And if you want to stay ahead of stories like this before they blow up everywhere else, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We're covering every angle the mainstream media won't touch. Every move being made behind the scenes, every conversation shaping the league's future. This league is changing fast, and the real power moves are always happening where most people aren't looking. Caitlin Clark, potentially training with Stephen Curry's shooting coach while quietly calling out the same defensive nonsense they both deal with, isn't accidental. That's intentional growth. This isn't just about improving her jumper or adding new tools. It's about leveling up her influence at the same time. By aligning her game and her voice with someone like Steph, she's putting herself in a position to help force change in how the WNBA is officiated without ever having to shout about it. Next video, we're breaking down what's really happening with the CBA negotiations and why Caitlin's confidence about the season happening tells us more than any official statement. You'll want to see that because it connects directly to everything we just covered. The WNBA is at a turning point. The players who understand how to use their leverage wisely are the ones who will shape what comes next. And Caitlin Clark is showing everyone exactly how it's done,